So I don't know if we should do like a quick clap just so we can like sync up when I'm editing.
That's a good idea.
A 1, 2, 3 clap.
Yep, let me know. Oh wait, now I gotta hit start the recording. Okay, start recording. Okay, recording now. So let me know with the clap. Let me 1, 2, 3 clap. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. 1, 2, 3 clap.
Oh, you use space. You said clap and then you clap.
I took myself. I didn't even realize I was gonna say clap. So let's just do 1, 2, 3 clap.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. All right. Hello, everybody. You've heard me talk about the magnificent art set reviews that Vorthos Mike has done in the past for Cool Stuff Inc. And we have a lovely opportunity to host one of those conversations here today. Mike's here with me, and we're going to be talking about Core Set 2020 and Commander 2019. And before we get into it, Mike, do you want to just like tell us a little bit about what the kind of ethos behind this video series has been all about?
Sure, we can totally do that. For folks that don't know, I'm Vorthos Mike. I do art reviews, and I've been doing them for quite a few years. And now I do more art shows. So you might have been to some of the art shows that I've done in person, art exhibitions, or a gallery show, which means they're sales. And one thing that I still try to do every single set is to do a review. And this review really allows an archive to go back and re-review what was the big thing we were talking about in terms of art predominantly. Flavor too, sure, because flavor, is the piece that helps inform it. But really, when you miss them, you don't ever get to go back, because it's a period of time when there's cultural relevance, where there's a milieu of what was happening in the world and where the game was. So with that in mind, there's 3 things we want to talk about each set. Usually there's a bunch of different themes, but we're going to keep it simple just to be in semblance of time. Mm-hmm. The first is what's new from a reprinted card with new art, some standout flavor, and then some standout art, the top 5 or something that you should know this is good, objectively good. Mm-hmm. And what's new, there's 2. Yes. There's 2 that really stand out. First one I want to talk about is Coral Merfolk. Mm. Groucho, what's your first set? What set of Magic did you start with?
I started when I was really young with Mirrodin, but memory's pretty loose on that one, to be honest. Yeah, but that's where I got
Mirrodin. Okay. Yeah. So you heard of Lord of Atlantis from back in the day. Oh, you're aware of what the Merfolk was in this metal world, right? Coral Merfolk is a reprinted 2-1. That's it. Blah. Yeah. Who cares, right? This was actually an old Spectrum Award winner. Not award winner. Spectrum included work by L.A. Williams, i.e. Alan Williams, which is also the same person if you notice the cards. Coral Merfolk shows the OG Merfolk. That Melissa Benson... Right. Super colorful, because I started in 94. I started technically during 4th edition, and give or take Legends, but in rural times we didn't have Legends, let's be honest. And this art really shows us what those color concepts would look like were they to exist today. Were those things to be around today, this is what they would look like. Yeah. And I think that's phenomenal. I think that's the most interesting idea, very subtle, that if you haven't seen it, you probably play this and probably didn't think about it because it's a little bit in shadow. Yeah.
And I think it's a theme that's going to come up a lot today, which is Magic is getting into a phase where it's very reflective about its past. And we're seeing, these signposts that invite us to look at the distance we've come across the many years that this game has progressed, really.
Yeah, I didn't think that it was going to be like that outside of Modern Horizons or Time Spiral. They really want self-reference. Yeah. But here, this is straight up that just outlandish colors. But what you do, you put it underwater, mute everything down, add some dark over the top, have a newer artist really swing for the fences here. And at this time, Lee Sedouan was newer. Like, only has 10 cards now, but started on that weird arena set, that new player experience, Right. We saw a couple people, we saw a couple new artists in there, and we're like, who are these folks? Well, they started there, and this is his first actual card. He did that Tactical Advantage, the Innistrad cool thing, and then did that River's Favor. Just really interesting, difficult things. And then since then has had like boom, 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 and then had that Sir Gwyn hero
Right.
in Eldraine. So really jumped up quickly
for
from
sure.
things like this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, what's the other one that you saw? The other one we got on our list.
Well, so the thing that I wanted to talk about with this next one, which is Show of Valor, is that it wouldn't have immediately jumped out to me that this was like a standout art card. So I invite you to kind of tell me, what's going on here? What should we be paying attention to?
Why? Really? Yeah. Look at the art. Look at the art.
I think it's beautiful, but I think it's the kind of art that you have to kind of linger over before you truly appreciate it. Like I would see the foreground, and I would see this kind of woman soldier, and I wouldn't immediately kind of reach back to that background where I think a lot of the action is like really taking place.
Well, I mean, even the original art, like the first one in M13, Anthony Palumbo, Tony Palumbo, that art shows a woman running out of fire or something of the sort, holding a little kid, right? Like that, could be a mother, could be a heroic soldier lady, who knows? So already it has a strong concept of like saving.
Yes.
Right? Like of this very deep thought. This new one by Micah Epstein is, okay, well, she's standing in shadow, fine. Okay, the person next to her is either dead or dying or struggling. You can see the two arrows.
Yeah, they're
the two arrows really, they show you the narrative though.
Yes.
That if the person were just sitting there, you don't know if they're alive or dead. With the arrows, you assume they're still kicking, and this lady who isn't in armor at all, notice, bare arms. She has cloth on. She picked up his sword. Like the squire picks up the sword from the knight, and the flavor text reinforces this. Yes. You don't even need the flavor text to explain that.
No.
So that's the first thing. And it's a +2/+4 for an instant, helps a little 1/1, whatever.
Yeah.
It's a back to the wall.
Right.
Back to the wall. You can see the wall behind. It's marble carved. The first time you see it, you're like, oh, it's like a ghost over the top of you, and she's getting the armor of this person. You're like, no, that's a wall. And then you see the shadows of these people coming up against you, and you're like, okay, that's probably a 1/1. That's a 1/1, or it's a 2/2/2/2 because soldiers are 2/2s or generally. Okay, she'll be fine. She's going to take care of both of these people coming at her. No big deal. And even painting marble is hard. It's difficult to show. Also in shadow. Also showing a narrative. On a combat trick people are going to use during this set, and everyone will forget about it.
Yeah. And that's kind of the beauty of what can be done on a magic card, right? Is that you can have this embedded narrative, and you can rely on the fact that people will probably look at it a few times over the course of play, right? So even if they're like dummies like me who only catch that first foreground element, eventually over time when they're kind of this image kind of wears in on them, they're going to notice these elements that you mentioned. They're going to put together the story.
I would hope so. And that's the point. That's why we're here. So that's kind of what's new. Reprinted cards, sure, fine. Standout flavor. I got a whole laundry list here. Groucho, you take one. Take one that you want to start with.
Okay.
We got a spicy list here.
Yes, I think if we're going to talk about what's going on with the set, what the culture was around the set, what the attitude was, I think there's only one starting point, and that's Ferocious Pup.
We got to start about the pup.
You got to
fuzz about pup. So for people that weren't around here, that years down the road, it's simple as a mother with a puppo, with a puppy, right? You get a 3-drop, you get a 2/2 and a 0/1, fine, right? Like you could sacrifice the 0/1 for things, the sacrifice theme with the Mardu aggro. You can sacrifice the pup token, so you get 2 things. Sack, get big. That all makes sense. The problem is, people were up in arms about this.
Yes. Justifiably so. Your voice makes it sound like you're questioning it. I think it makes perfect sense, to be honest.
Oh my god, no. There were people that are like, if you sacrifice that pup, I will attack you every time in Commander. And you're like, whoa, okay, this is crossing formats. All right, neat. Or people right away like, I will call a judge on you if you sacrifice the pup. You can keep the token, but don't do the pup.
Exactly.
So it's just a fun concept. A really clever way to get some levity in, have a puppo, have a little dog in there, which worked out really nice.
Something I admire about M20 too is that there are these kind of serious, substitute titans, these cavaliers, but we also have these more playful elements. I think we'll come to a few others over the course of this video, but this is a good place to start talking about that. That
Right.
there are elements of this game beyond its function on the battlefield. There's also a social element that I think this card specifically really activated.
I think you're right, and I think some of that playfulness is back more than ever before, and it's on more than just good cards. Like you can see it in Drawn from Dreams, which is another really standout flavor piece of. Let's just put 2 fish. And you're like, what? But like having koi and some sort of infinity symbol from dreams and things, that's a cool concept. Whether they included the fish in the art description, whether they didn't, I think that's just a nice touch, and it's a rare, so people will see it and will try to figure out how good it is.
Yeah, and a nice kind of way of drawing a card to a planeswalker or a primary character that's not just kind of shoving their face in it. Like we can make cultural associations that maybe online, even before we get to the flavor text, would be associated with this kind of magical koi pond before we even, like I said, make the connection through the flavor text.
Right, and that cultural thing you touched on, I think is definitely a vein in the set.
Yeah.
For who needs to be the flavor text of this person talking about this? Well, we have an Asian character that would probably fit here. That makes sense. Well, what else can we get a little bit of injections in all over the place, whether it's planeswalkers or just culturally? Like I look at Eternal Isolation and think, oh,
right.
Okay, I know this Greek story. I know exactly what this is. Nobody's eating the liver every single day, but like chaining the Titan to the mountain where we saw Chain to the Rocks in the past with in Theros, to just a clean, simple. How do you tuck a big creature? What does that feel like?
Yes.
Oh, let's go to classical examples.
Yeah.
So that one worked out super well too. And then simplistic ones that are just show some chicken legs. just show some chicken legs. Like what does that flavor mean?
Yeah, exactly. And the interesting thing about this is I think in terms of within the set, we talked about how the blue-white archetype is flyers, so it makes sense within the logic of this set that it would be chicken legs. But again, to go back to the idea of what's happening in the game at the time this is released, when people saw Fry, what they saw is, I can kill Teferi with this. I can destroy Teferi with this.
Exactly. Which is hilarious to me that like Teferi equals chicken, right?
Yeah, exactly.
which was vast majority of what this thing was used for.
Yeah.
And this year, we finally saw answers to planeswalkers more than we've ever seen before. Largely because of War of the Spark, because they were everywhere. But now that Pandora's box is open, and then you can't really close it easily. Speaking of that Fry levity, how do you feel about Colossus Hammer?
I mean, is undying devotion too strong a phrasing? I love it. I think it's an incredible card, and I think it's, speaking to someone who plays the game primarily in draft form, it's the kind of card you can get excited about because you want to do the thing. You see the art and you see the kind of exact role that it will play in game, and you get excited about being that short dwarf with the kind of impossibly large hammer who just wins out of nowhere. That's something that you can get a thrill out of that is maybe not as spiky as it could be, maybe not as efficient as it could be, but it's a kind of beautiful marriage of gameplay and kind of the art that depicts that gameplay.
Right. I like the low view to show, beautiful. This is, the person is supposed to seem larger. It's a human or a dwarf. And then you're like, the thing is still just comically oversized.
Yeah.
Which it can be used beyond draft, right? There's that whole deck where you can equip for free and the thing comes in, bang, bang. You swing for 11, turn 3.
And the interesting thing about the perspective, just to linger on it a little bit longer, is I think the kind of, the view we have of this would usually be used to make this figure seem intimidating, but I'm always on his side. I can't really pinpoint exactly what is being done to invite that kind of sympathy to him, but I don't feel threatened by him at all. I feel like we are co-participants in something.
Right, I feel like he's an ally. He's standing next to me, and this silly little dwarf has this comically oversized. axe, like Lord of the Rings or something of the
Yeah.
sort,
Yeah.
which works out. Moving in on that, some other pieces that I really liked seeing was the Ironroot Warlord. I
Mhm.
think this was just a great visual concept of, okay, you need to make a treefolk creature.
Mhm.
It needs to make tokens.
Mhm.
You need to show the tokens. The treefolk has to wear armor. Make it work, Philip.
Yeah.
Just all of these pieces of not even the art, not even talking about art, just compositionally a very difficult to execute card. No question. Just like the low, to get its sympathy from the dwarf sort of thing, looking at the hammer. I feel like this is a really a tactical art description to say, how can you make all these things fit
Mm.
in 2 inches by 3 inches? Just that. How do you make this work
Man.
so it doesn't look mushed or blurred or whatever?
Mhm.
So I think Philip did a great job there, and for a hard thing,
Mhm.
neat. But moving on, I know we're low on time. How do you feel about Risen Reef as a card, since you've probably played it 1,000 times in draft?
You know, I should hate it more than I do, but I'm kind of on board for a giant piece of coral that just dominates a game. I mean, if I'm gonna be crushed by anything, I want it to be a beautiful piece of like sea life.
Right, that looks wonderfully painted. I mean,
Yeah,
it looks very pretty.
yeah.
It gives us something new in Simic colors of
Hmm.
like, oh, the land is alive and it's coral moving, and you're
Hmm.
like, oh yeah, I guess we make landimals and land creatures, but oh, I like that. I just like that idea that they push that
Hmm.
to say like, how can you get more lands? Well, the lands are alive, and then they're calling their other coral buddy, and maybe there's a more eel in one, and it's got a weird ability or something, right?
Yeah, for sure. And in a set that kind of positions Omnath as one of its kind of central figures, the idea that the land will rise up is completely fitting.
Yeah, I wholly agree. Wholly agree. And
Hmm.
and as it references each other, the last one we really kind of see in the standout flavor is, just a bounce spell. It's Captivating Gyre, and bounce 3 things. That's not unusual. That's not that weird at all.
Hmm.
But it references art in the set, and it has flavor text from a legend in the set, which I've never seen in a core set be that self-aware, and I
Right.
feel that's new. I feel that's totally a new thing. You'll see it in like a Planeswalker talking about a Planeswalker thing, but not like one-off legends and cards.
And I think it's indicative of the fact that they're in that kind of time period where they've taken off doing core sets. They've kind of rethought what the role of these kinds of sets are. It doesn't mean they have to take a complete break from character or story. It doesn't mean they have to have this kind of watered down set that won't really make an impact in any formats. It just means that they have more space to play. I think that's something we're seeing again and again. More room to kind of let their creativity go a little wild.
That's a really interesting idea of, they don't have to be a pause.
Exactly.
You can continue on telling interesting stories, interesting interactions, and that someone might find their Fibblefip in
Exactly.
the set, and they're like kind of planting that seed. So I super favor fun of that.
Mhm.
So looking into art, there are a few here. Not all the cards are good, which is great. I love when phenomenal art is on cards that people don't know about. Other thing in white that I think a lot of people noticed, Groucho, is that Angel of Vitality.
Mhm.
People always look for good angels. They
Mhm.
want to see something new.
Mhm.
They just want to see something that's a little spicier than normal. And you get a 3-drop 2/2 angel, which is not a 4/4, not a 5/5. Now that we have 1/1 angels, right?
Yeah.
And letting Johannes show what he's been doing in tokens.
Mm.
He's been doing this, flying papers or scrolls or feathers or all these things in like his personal work. You've
Right.
seen it in some of his like token Patreons,
Hmm.
but they just let him go hog wild here, and it's just beauty. It's just a gorgeous work. Again, uncommon.
Yeah. And all the kind of the fluttering aspect of it really gives it that impression of descent, of like landing and kind of grace. I like that a lot. The sense of movement that is kind of emblematized here.
Yeah, it's great to see it at such a small size that really still works.
Mm,
Because it can get muddy very quickly, and you can tell figure, and then you're
of
like, oh, there's
course.
just so much going on. Like they her showing her hands being the kind of the source of the magical essence, lights up, that can still be seen. If you see some of the larger art, you can see some of her clothing isn't just cloth. There's actually texture to it. It almost looks like a Lululemon clothing, like it's like almost like athleisure, which I think is kind of cool and kind of interesting. That reflects this is normal to see, that you don't have to have them in flowing, symbolic robes and such. So good piece there. I mentioned one of these already, which we don't need to get in depth a lot, but a hardcover. One of your boys, Canadian artist, found that out, that he lives near Toronto, just west of it in London, with Pindersky, Hugh Pinder. Just a lovely D&D looking work. That's it.
That's a really good way to put it. That's a really good way to put it.
It's just a D&D work. This could look in any page, in any book of any player's guide, DM guide, anything of that sort. You could put this in there and you're like, oh yeah, it's a wizard and he's reading out of a spell book.
But I think one of the reasons maybe that's the case is because it invites us to kind of get into the scene. What is going on here? Why is he... It looks like he's maybe a bit in flight or rushed, where there's a lot of action, a lot of drama to it, even though there might not be a lot of, indication of what that drama or action proceeds from or comes from. We are invited to make that imaginative leap, and I think that's always good to see. Right,
and I think the mechanics are perfectly shown in that. He doesn't gain any power, but he gains some toughness. Why does he need toughness? Well, he's going to get shanked in a second here, but his job is to get the info, discard the info for some other reason. We can even see an alliterative or really a symbolic piece of his leg. It looks like Jace Beleren.
Very interesting.
For some of those symbols, just even how those waves looking like a topographical map. It's just so subtle. But you could see an art director seeing, oh, there's 2 lines there. Oh, actually, if you make a couple more, you can reference Jace and people will love that. And there could be a little Easter egg for folks. I thought it looked good. I thought it looked good. What do you think about the stained glass? The icon. Icon of Answers. Yeah, did you look at this ever?
So when it first came out, I think there's a high resolution version of this, correct?
Yep. Oh yeah. Chris Seaman, of course.
Yeah, okay.
Chris Seaman always posts all his work, of course.
Yeah. And, we talked a little bit.
Traditional painting, in case people are curious.
Yes, exactly. So we talked a little bit about what pulls together a set like this, where a core set can be anything really. And I'd like a piece like this to serve as the kind of headline for a set. It's kind of, this is what we're going to see. Again, a little bit like the Throne of Eldraine story moments. It's kind of inviting us into this world that may seem incongruent or different. Just looking at the cards individually, but we can see there's intention here. There's a lot of stories that have been placed together meaningfully.
Right. I want to know more about this.
Yes.
It feels similar to pieces from Avacyn Restored or something of the sort, with any sort of remembrance of any sort of past civilization. And in a core set, it's, who are these people? Who are they talking about? What are they referencing? Why is there a Hydra there? Who are these 2 people in front? Yeah. I think some of that is just a fascinating look that, okay, is the Hydra supposed to be talking about progenitus? Or, who are the 2 characters in front? Are they magic people we're supposed to know? Is the dragon in the top front maybe from Is It? Is it Niv Mizzet? What? And I think that sort of analyzing factor that invites you into it is very good for the game. I really do. I think it gets people into that Vorthos community where you start to look to be like, what does the stained glass mean? Has anybody figured it out? Right? It's built in for forums circa 1999.
Yeah. There should be a long wiki page on this. I don't know if there is, but there should be.
There should be. I would love if this was a plant. I would love if this was a plant for the Kiara set. Well, imposed, we assume it's the Kiara set with the behemoths coming. I want it to be a future set, and they just dropped it in the core set, and then they're like, oh, no big deal, we're just not going to tell anyone. I want that so bad.
Well, we'll see. There's
Well,
still
I
time.
guess we will. I guess we will. Obviously, standout art in other ones. We don't need to talk more about Coral Merfolk. Phenomenal, just a phenomenal art, phenomenally painted, really well done well. Want to talk maybe on Golos,
Yes.
the robot.
See, I didn't necessarily consider, like, obviously he's an artifact, but I got way more of a samurai vibe than a robot vibe.
Samurai.
Yeah.
Really? Okay, so let me know. How did you get that out of it?
So the kind of like domed helmet piece gave me the
Mm-hmm.
impression of a kind of East Asian origin, and
Sure.
there's this sense of a kind of lone warrior or lone wanderer that I either go to Western cowboys or samurai, and I don't know. I find this very very evocative of a kind of Akira Kurosawa film that doesn't exist. Some kind of
Sure.
sci-fi Kurosawa movie that would tell the story of Golos. But yeah, what draws you to this one
Well, it's the
yourself?
waterfall. It's the
Of
waterfall.
course, of course.
Groucho. Like, how does that not feel East Asian in origin
Right,
somewhere?
right.
Of very peaceful, quiet wanderer, the soldier for hire. But I
Mm.
said, then you see, oh, it's a scout. Okay, that's weird. It's a pilgrim, though.
Mhm.
Okay, so is this a religious figure?
Mm.
Why is it a religious figure? How is it a scout for something? Those pieces all make me ask, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Then I look at the work closer and I see rusted metal,
Mm.
which is really, really hard to do. It's really hard to paint well.
Yeah.
So I not only see rusted metal, I see remove the character, just an interesting composition
Absolutely.
landscape.
Yeah.
You see 3-stage waterfall. You see 2 different pieces of dirt that allow you to have a foreground and a background and almost a midground even with the first level of
Yeah.
the waterfall.
Mhm.
Plus you see the weathering. The beyond the rust, you look at the cloak and say, okay, this pilgrim's been out there a while.
Yeah.
Has been possible to find mana lines, mana ley lines, or something of the sort of tracking where they work together. I think that's shown in the art, and I think even if you didn't have any mechanics, you could come to that conclusion. I see 5 colors of mana. I see a waterfall. I see a walking stick. There's a traveler with mana. What does that mean? What is the mannequin? What is the millikin? This background visual information that Magic players have. And Joseph Meehan, this is actually one of his first traditional giant Magic paintings.
Wow.
And he had to take 8 pieces of paper and put them next to each other, like 8 pieces of paper. So he didn't have like a big giant like canvas, and he put them all next to each other, and then he adhered them to board, and then he painted over the top of them.
Wow.
So it's this leveling up of the artist that realized, this card's super good. I got to make it big.
Yeah.
How do I make it really big? All right, I got to figure it out. Like, just a phenomenal leveling up by Joe Meehan, and the card's gonna be played forever because it's Solemn Simulacrum that's definitely on steroids.
I mean, there was a Star City Games tournament happening right now, and it's dominating the standard slot. It's I think got to be at least like 60% of the field.
Right, and if you play Arena on any of the match games, you see it everywhere. All the time.
This is the kind of card, kind of going back to we were talking about Risen Reef being a kind of dominant card. This is the kind of card you're part of you is happy to see it because of that incredible art.
Right. Like if the art was fine or covering the base, or you didn't feel it really mixed well, you're like, oh, well, it's great, but kind of a shame. And that does inevitably that sometimes happens. But here it's like, this is a commander instead of just like an inclusion. Like you want to play it because it's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Okay, looking at other art, I checked out Blood-Soaked Altar. I thought that one was just a really well done showing of metal.
Yeah. Just
how do you show metal? How do you show stone interacting with each other? How do you get the misty backgrounds that Kev Walker is known for? He's been doing that since ever. Everybody knows Kev Walker's smoky background. Like, he's got that on lock.
Yeah.
And, Sidar said, okay, I've been playing around making these weird-looking demons. What if I put some Indian-looking demons in there? And
Yeah.
the art directors are like, go on. And he's like, what if I make a token? And they're like, go on. And now he made both of these just phenomenally well done.
That token is unreal.
The token is silly. We got to show that token too.
Yeah.
Like not only you see the token by itself and you're like, all right, Indian looking demon, big tooth mouth, fat belly, which is great.
Yeah.
Just assume it's going to be eating a bunch of things. But looking at the altar of this is an old concept. We've had altars in Magic since ever, all the way back. So making it feel fresh and new, but then the ability of connecting it to a token, because in the actual piece, there's three faces. Really, there's the big altar, and then there's like one level, and then two level, then the bottom level, and that face in the bottom level then is recreated by the token.
Yeah.
You can see the horns, you can see how the eyes and the nose work together, and it doesn't look out of place. Like it doesn't have like light shining on it.
Right.
Say,
Okay.
like, this is the thing that gets made. You know, they do it with slivers where they have like the openings in the thing. So like, all right, pull the goo in there and then we make a sliver. Here it's like evocative of you don't get to see the action happening. You don't get to see what's being sacrificed.
Yeah.
You don't get to see what does pay to life mean in a game. Instead, you just seek to see the side and the after effect. And the after effect really is the demon that you already have in play.
Yeah. But it's
just want to.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say there's such a phenomenal implication of what all those things are. Even if you don't see them, you know that whatever happened at this altar is not great. Not something you want to hang around for, basically.
No, not even close. Not even close. So really well done by Sid out there. Really liked how that kind of shook out with the set as again uncommon. Other piece that really that stood out that I want to talk about is Scheming Symmetry by your fellow Canuck, fellow Canadian.
The Canuck of the moment in many ways.
Did you think, like, I don't want to say it. I don't want to say that he is just ubiquitous right now.
Yeah.
Right? But how do you not mention it?
Yeah. Everywhere
Everywhere you go on Reddit, they talk about Seb McKinnon. Everyone on Twitter he gets a new card out. They're like, dude, did you see the Seb McKinnon art?
Yeah.
He's the hot artist right now. He really is. His Kickstarters are always going crazy.
Yeah.
People want to know what he's up to. And yet people don't interview him enough. Drives me bananas. Just ask the guy. He's got a great French Canadian accent.
I think one of the kind of roles he plays, or why he excites players so much, is because he's such a strong rebuke to that age-old criticism that all the Magic art is looking too similar nowadays. I don't subscribe to that belief, but I think if you look at the work of Seb McKinnon, that's just an immediate kind of rejection of that premise, because he does have a kind of internal consistent aesthetic that we see continuously card after card after card, regardless of the setting.
It is. It's almost like he beats to the march of his own drum.
Yeah.
I do know some background on this. How do you get into this correctly? He has some latitudes that by building up trust, you don't have to worry about. I want to take it in this direction. What do you guys think? Or here's a rough idea. Could you get us a quick sketch on it and see where it goes?
Right.
And he's like, okay, well, what about this? What if I have and he talked about Scheming Symmetry too, that this isn't the first thing he tried. This is almost the second thing he tried. And by having that ability, we're like, all right, just make it conceptual and just get the concept across. And he's like, okay. And he comes up with, both people search their libraries. What is that into? They're like, oh, you're both searching through books or things. And he's like, no. What if it's like cards? And you're like, what? It's like Jack of Hearts sort of thing. And you're like, what? What? Like, who would think of that? Who would go there? Like, you can't reference that. That's like a tarot thing.
Yeah.
That, like, they always have this referential material, and you assume you can't use those pieces because it's like, oh, that's not really magic. And he's like, what if it is magic?
Right.
What if I make it spicy? What would you do then? And they're like, well, okay, man, just okay. You get those sketches in.
Yeah.
So just lovely work here. And technically on a very, very high level, clearly. I mean, it's one thing to say two characters, one upside down, fighting each other so it looks like Kamigawa. It's another to actually execute that is readable, and then this card becomes a commander staple for people that you're going to see this for years. Phenomenal work there. Other piece want to talk about is the Unholy Indenture. And Groucho, I saw this right away and said, okay, this is Seb art. And the only reason I want to touch on this real quickly is because this theme of his gets to be reused, has a very old history in Magic, and that's the Time Walk people. You see it with the missing faces, and it's so subtle. This will only be used in Draft. However, for someone that looks at the art and really digs in, it's fully conceptual. They're in a lake of some variety, Lake of the Dead, sort of fun, back history. Reference some of the Time Walk people, that you get the next life, the thing again. And that background, since he played the game, he collected the art with his brothers, that he knows those references, and they just get plopped in there. And you have to stare at the art to see them. Just give it some time, though. So I have one other piece, one other work, and I think it is by far the best art in the set.
So if it's the one,
and before I even mention what it is, do you think it's the best art in the set?
So I will tell you this: I thought of you immediately when I saw this card.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Because I know how much you love fabrics, and I think this is, in some ways, a masterclass in that element of Magic art. If we're talking about the same card.
I believe we are.
Why don't you take it away and kind of gush a little for me then? Okay,
so this is the last piece we have here. They really are the standout, and that's Loxodon Lifechanger. Okay, it's a rare, sure, 6-drop, costs a bajillion mana. You gain some life, cool. By a bunch of dudes, it gets pumped, neat, fine. Becomes a giant creature. These are like the intro pack rares. It's straight up like it's intro pack rare, Timmy, casual. There's, it really is. It has all of those pieces that people have seen 1,000 times already. But the card art, oh boy. If people don't know who Nick Gregory is, now people realize. And I remember when this thing came out and was like, ooh. I remember seeing his Plague Engineer in Modern Horizons. I'm like, whoa, this guy's good. He's really good. And that was his only good. He had that great card, and he had Lightning Skelemental, and everyone's like, ha, it's like the 2 cards, and everyone's like, yeah, that's neat. And then he came out with Loxodon Lifechanger, and I'm like, oh, okay. He has not only the ability to show magical effects, which we can see. You can see the little blue things around as a necklace.
For sure.
You also see fabric that's folded, fabric that's tightly knit, and you can see it again at 2 inch by 3 inch. But also you get a elephant cleric, which immediately you got to think Ganesh, you got to think Indian, Hindu art right away. And how did he make it celebratory or referential of an in real life religion without it being pun based or punching down or not executed well? How do you keep it real? And I pick up on those things and say, okay, elephant cleric, right away I'm thinking boom, Hindu. But then I see, he has the item in his hand. I'm like, okay, he got reference from that. He got inspired by that. That's awesome. Those are wonderful things. But I look at this and see, this is not a watercolor. It's not. It looks like a watercolor.
Definitely. I assumed it was.
No, it's not. He's a digital artist. So I looked at this on ArtStation, which is a kind of a deviant art. It's like the new deviant art, let's be honest. And I had to stare at this to say, why is no one talking about this? Why is no one mentioning this at all? And really, it's because it's just the intro pack rare. Right. No one thinks about these sort of cards after they come out, if they aren't phenomenally good. If they're not have an immediate impact, immediately into decks, immediately find a home, you can skip over these. And instead, we look at this and say, this is a digital work that feels like a traditional painting. Feels like a watercolor, heavy, thicker watercolor. And there's no sense of place. There's no self-referential material. There's a cat on one of his necklaces that's blue. There's nothing to know what it is. He's got bells on his tusks. I want to see more things like this because it encourages me to find culture in Magic and allows them to infuse culture into Magic
Right.
seamlessly into it. Oh well, of course it's gonna be a Lockstone. Of course it's gonna reference a Hindu god. We'd be dumb not to.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it allows him that latitude that he doesn't have to worry about. Well, if he doesn't have the right items, people are going to be angry. They're like, dude, just make it cool, make it Magic. Go.
Right, of course. Yeah.
So, want to really just highlight that. I think that's by far the best piece. Even though there are phenomenal ones, I was really just wowed by this. Really, really was. If this is a painting, I buy this immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And then you find it in the art book at the end of the year, and everyone's like, "Wow, who missed this?" And I'm like, "Did you not look at the card? What are you doing? What are you doing?" So phenomenal work there. But as we close the door on M20, Groucho, well, what did you see? What was your favorite work in here? Obviously, you know what mine is. It's Lifechanger.
Yeah.
What did you and did you really find affinity toward?
So we didn't get the time to chat about it too much, but Bloodthirsty Aerialist, I think, is my favorite piece from the set. And it's got this kind of gothic intensity to it. And also, like you're saying with the Loxodon, invites us into a whole world without dressing that world up too much. We see, this incredible sense of these like lush, almost maroony fabrics that are also like wings. And
I guess, yeah.
I don't know, yeah, like it's just incredibly lush. That's the word I would use for it. And I just want to live in this piece is how I feel, even though I don't think this vampire rogue would treat me that well.
Probably not. So Igor, I don't feel he's been getting love lately. I don't figure Igor Kirlik has really gotten the crowd the respect that he really deserves. I think pieces like his Praetor, people really enjoy. I think his work in New Phyrexia, people really grasped.
Right.
But I think pieces like this it's an uncommon. The vampire's upside down. And we're seeing it upside down.
Yeah.
And are we upside down as the viewer? Are we hanging by our feet? Like, are we vampires with her? Or are we a captured person?
Right.
Right? Like, are we the human that's gaining life and giving her the life? Or what? And instead, you could have, okay, what is a bloodthirsty aerialist? Okay, we need to put something with the air. Fine. They're swinging from a thing. How do you show that? Normally, this person's standing on a chandelier, right? Or hanging from something in a cage or something like that. Instead of, we are a participant here. Which I think is just phenomenal. And, the painted well, digital work, doesn't look digital. His texturing is fantastic. And I want to know what setting this is.
Yeah.
Is this Innistrad? Is it not Innistrad? Where is it?
Yeah, I don't think it's Innistrad. I don't know what gives me that sense, but yeah, I don't get the sense that this is Innistrad.
And it can't be, because it's all that their armor and it's cold and all those pieces there don't really fit the world here. But it asks you, okay, when we return, because it's not a when, it's not an if. To Innistrad, it's very popular. It's a when. Will we see some sort of family that has that? Because mind you, they went there and they blew up the whole world. Right. Thank you, Nahiri. Went nuts. Will we see any return of, okay, this is pageantry may be gone, but there's playfulness now of balancing out these aspects and the circus performers like it is on, I don't know, Rakdos.
Yeah.
So good pick with their Groucher. I think this is a phenomenal art, and I think people shouldn't sleep on this one. I think it's a really, really great work.
Awesome.
So that kind of rounds out Core 2020, at least for now.
Exactly. Well, we'll return. All right, in part 2 of our discussion here today, we wanted to jump into Commander 2019. And just as a quick reminder of what those decks are all about, we've got the Merciless Rage, kind of Rakdos Madness deck. We've got the Faceless Menace, which is the Morph deck in Sultai. We've got the Mystic Intellect, which is a kind of spell recursion Jeskai deck. And we've got the Primal Genesis, a populate deck in Naya. And the crew behind this commander set is a little unusual, a little different than what you're used to. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Mike?
Sure. I mean, obviously Ethan Fleischer, the creative lead, creative means department, but he was the design lead of this. And he's the one who reads all the books. He's the one who reads all the comics. If you're ever on Twitter, he's talking about what have you, obscure character, and he's trying to work them in, like Feldon. Like that sort of push really is Ethan. Yeah. So whenever you see these sets that are set independent, you can see a little bit of his touch where he, might sneak a couple things in there that it's fan service for the long time enfranchised, which how delightful is that? So that's the first thing people need to know is that, Ethan Fleischer killing it. Second thing is that the art direction of the sets are newer people, or newer to you, maybe, or newer to the listeners here. So it's Taylor Ingvarsson, and Taylor, someone I know, he is still newer-ish. Everyone knows Cynthia Shepard, sure. Everyone knows Don Murin, sure. He's been there a few years now, and he really led. And he had another art director, Bree Heiss, working with him. And Bree started out as a graphic designer at Wizards and is down doing art direction. And Taylor, at a previous game company, worked as an art graphic designer as well. So just think of well-designed cards. So when you think of that, we'll get this later when we have some standout art. Think of composition. Think about things all getting their separate spaces and being readable. It's very prevalent in this set that things aren't muddy, things aren't too busy. Everything has its right place, and it's delightful to see because in Commander games there's a lot going on, so you can see what's going on with it, and it feels as though they raised the bar here for that. What else did they change in here, Groucho? I know there's something else too.
We were talking about this a little bit beforehand, but the Commander sets have become this place where the game can revisit some of its classic characters, and two that immediately jump to mind from this set are Gerard and Grevitt.
Right. Two the protagonists and antagonists, the direct ones from the Weatherlight saga, if people don't know. And their cards previously, they were not great. They were okay.
I think you could say at this point that they're just bad.
Yeah. they were not good. Yeah. Like Jared's card was not good. Not good at all. So it was really great to see that updated. We could talk about that standout art right now. Zach Stella killed it. Yeah. Killed it in this set of having different references in there, having the ships in the background, just straight wizardry there. I was blown away when I saw those it's like textured metal or stone. No. It's like a stained glass and there's people and it's like graphic design of the ship behind. And I'm like, man, this is a thing. This is a new level.
Yeah. If there was any question of Gerard not getting his due beforehand, there's certainly none of that now. It'd be hard to imagine any character being enshrined more lovingly than this character gets here.
Right. It's legacy weapon. I mean, straight up his mechanic is he dies with all the legacy weapons. Guess what happens? Everything comes back into play. Everything resets. Yeah. And you're like, and he has first strike. No big deal. Because of course he does. So there's that. Yeah. There's not a whole lot to say other than these feel like they were on time. I mean, people wanted them revisited for years and years and years, but you can't just go back to the sets when they aren't in the story and they're dead. They've been dead a while. Yeah. So where else can you put them? Mm-hmm. Modern Horizons? Yeah, I guess, but they're hard to play. Mm. They're meant for commander decks. That's really what they're for.
Yeah, definitely.
So placing those perfectly right. Also on things that I wanted to touch on of just real quick, reprinted cards. Mm-hmm. Just real quick. Because, I mean, these are reprinted characters, but not the same card. They got updated. That's great. But I think having a few cards that are reprinted with great new art is always welcome. Yeah. People get excited about those, and they say, okay, who's the good commander? Jared's. Okay, what are there any other ones that I'll already have in my deck that I'd like to update? Mm-hmm. And I saw Hour of Reckoning right away. Couldn't miss it. How do you miss it?
Exactly.
And that piece, oh man, I was really surprised at this. I thought, okay, this is a card that only can be in really narrow settings because it's a token wrath, right? Like where else can you put it? But didn't give it to Howard Lyon, didn't give it to Drew Baker, who are, more devout people, and instead call up Joe Meehan and say, Joe, can we have a rapture moment, right, of this? It destroys all non-token creatures, sure. So it's got to be like armies stay alive and the singular big beasts and things die. But could you show a religious symbol, the rapture that Christians, believe in, that second coming comes and people that are all of faith and believers, they all get entered in right away at the same time simultaneously. And just showing that just out of space, no setting, no way to see a set. It's just normal looking peasant folk all getting this at the same time. And I just think that's phenomenal. Such a simple art, but as conceptual to step back to say, okay, how can we make it of the people that leave that it's more joyful rather than this religious moment of like smiting those, it's saving those. And I think that's a cool way to show it.
Yeah. Also just what's unseen as well. Like there's a lot of implication on like what's above, but we're not given that information. We just know that for these individuals, this is kind of, like you say, a moment of almost ecstasy.
It is. It's the Saint Teresa, right? Like of the divine light coming down. And instead of them all being killed, they're being saved to another thing, which is a weird way to see a wrath. Where you're destroying the things that aren't it. It's like, no. Yeah. Imagine they're all getting transported somewhere to a new board state.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting way to think about that.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of twist on flavor.
Yeah, and I think the other card we talked about, precast, the other reprint, Mimic Vat, it fits into that too. And that's from Donato Giancola, Donnie Cola. And it's a Mimic Vat piece on Scars of Mirrodin, making a all Phyrexian creature, instead of like the Mirren silver goo, now it's all black. It's all ichor. Right? So it's the same setting of the original Mimic Vat. It's the same location, and it's black like it was before, but you get to that it was just oil in the past. Now there's new meaning to it. It's that is a pure Phyrexianized oil creation, a copy.
Right.
What does that mean? What does that look like?
Yeah.
So I think that was done. Obviously, he can paint, he paints his face off with, wonderful greens and yellows and oranges in there. But seeing some of these like peekins, you touched on with some of the storyline is that's the only place you can put them.
Yeah. Like
the weird past storylines, the look-ins to the planes, like how is Koth doing? What's going on? We sat with Phyrexian Arena not so long ago. They're like, oh, dude's still fighting. Cool. That I want to see more of these for planes that are hard to visit. That okay, well, Lorwyn's kind of tough because that story's kind of already been told. They had the night day and everything got fixed, but you could still have like revisit a point in time through like artifacts that exist, and then you can reskin it. This one is still Phyrexian, but it doesn't need to be. It could be like fairy magic or something. I think it'd be kind of a cool thing.
Yeah. I totally agree, and I think the team at Wizards is working to position the commander sets in that way as a way to kind of extend our reach beyond the sets we get to in a given year. Right.
Agreed there. So what about flavor? What do you got for flavor, Groucho? What stood out to you that you were like, oh, that's a neat thing. That's a neat idea.
For me, again, the story of this set is, the return of some classic characters, and in terms of storyline, at least, we can discuss the art a little bit, but I do think the new Chainer is worth kind of highlighting as well. Yeah,
I mean they made Chainer good.
Yeah,
right. Like they made Chainer good. Because if you played with the OG one, you're like, nightmares get +1, and you're like, how many nightmares are there?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that good?
Yeah.
And instead, the new one is just like, whoa, okay, this is this is I got to deal with this now. Free discard, incredible. You get to see something visualized of the actual nightmares itself.
Yeah.
I was really happy with this. I thought this was a cool idea to include that. We were waiting for it in Dominaria because they had the other chainer pieces. One was even a saga, the wonderful work of Folk and Baga making Chainer's Torment. And I'm like, oh, are they going to put Chainer in it? Are they going to have a reference to Chainer? Well, no, just that. And then we had to wait a few more months to see it later. And I think you're right. I think that piece is fantastic. And it's traditionally painted, which is also really cool.
And you're pointing to something that I think has made these visits to these older legendary or crucial story characters so impactful in both Modern Horizons and in this Commander set, which is they've found ways mechanically to kind of make the characters and the cards kind of work in sync. This feels like what Chainer would do, basically.
Right. And I think I'd like to think that's an Ethan thing of, okay, this is what the guy does.
Yeah.
How do we make that get good? How do we sit down and really think, what is the core of this character? And how can I make it that people are excited about it? The last thing you want is a legendary that people are like, oh, yeah, that's just one in the deck.
Yeah.
Rather than finding like Carrick, son of Yawgmoth, who's totally a character in the books that no one ever thought they would get a character card.
Yeah.
Has this spiky, incredibly irritating thing to play against that I don't want to play against really at all. And, there's no flavor text on it, but it follows that Narset model of high-costed weird with low power toughness, and it's just shenanigans on a card. I mean, just shenanigans. That you get being able to have Phyrexian mana for anything black in a deck is just stupid. That's so ridiculously overpowered. Yeah. And then every time you do it, it gets bigger. Come on.
Yeah, it seems like too these sets are a way for Wizards to revisit mechanics that they kind of swore off essentially.
Right.
I think we've all come to agree that Phyrexian mana is maybe not the most game friendly mechanic, but I think it works here at least if nothing else from a flavor standpoint.
Right, and I think you're right on that. The revisiting is well done. Adding Morph in to one of the decks, I think was like, oh yeah, remember Morph? Yeah, everyone's like, oh yeah, that was Khans of Tarkir, and they're like, okay, what if we make Vesuvan Doppelganger again? And everyone's like, okay, yeah, we remember that. It was Quentin Hoover, our boy, okay. And then you see it here, and you're like, okay, well, how can we show the growth from the Morph a little better? That breaking of the little spider creature. How can we show that a little better? How can we give us, a little diversity in the set, which is always welcome. Don't get me wrong. People always need to have a little more in larger sets when you're reprinting it. Be mindful of it. And then we get to see just, oh, you need to make 2 characters, Ralph. He's like, wait, what? They're like, yeah, we make it detailed. And he's like, well, okay. And he's like, okay, fine. This character is going to have fringe and different colors, and there's going to be weapons, and there's going to be all sorts of dangly stuff. And they're like, all right, Ralph, yeah, you didn't have to do that, bud, but yeah, it's really cool. I remember seeing Chris Ron talk about this on Facebook. It was like, man, you really painted that twice. Why did you do that? Which I just laughed at. I'm like, oh, man, it's great to have other contemporaries seeing a lot of effort really put into a work. So fantastic piece there. Yeah. You saw the one Commander card that referenced the community card, I assume, the Bone Miser, right?
Yes, I love Bone Miser.
Yeah, I want this to just exist forever, that they slowly sneak in this community card that, we worked on forever ago. The enchantment, Waste Not. And here it's the exact same dude, and it still does like a bunch of stuff too, which is great.
Yeah, this might be maybe I should save this, but this might be my favorite card in the set for sure.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it the mechanical part, or is it the reference to the community part? Like, well, what makes it fair?
I think so. The community thing is probably what pushed it over the top, but I think I just want to know more about this guy.
Right.
If you see him and you're like, oh, he's got a billion and one stories to tell, and I'll take like 3 of those and be horrified.
Right, totally. I would love to see, like, is this actually a legendary creature like 10 years from now?
Oh my god.
Or are there like a few of these bone misers and there's like a bone miser king?
Oh my god.
Like, how cool would that be? Like, this is a wizard, but then there's like a bone miser like lich that does all those things. Like, how cool would that be? And they're like, oh yeah, this is on this little part of this plane.
Yeah.
And we're gonna visit it in a core set. Kind of like the Onaki ogres from a few years ago.
Right.
Like, I want it to be like that.
So
and
you're
like,
saying Bone Miser is part of a union? There's a whole...
Yes, he totally is. He totally is. And there's like bone miser ladies as well.
Right, of course. Very inclusive.
Yeah, why wouldn't they be? There's bone witches. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
I think the high detail and the self-referential thing of that, people picked up right away and they're like, okay, let's move on. And I'm like, no, please look at the thing. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Thought that went well. Thinking of pieces that want to have a story told, how do you feel about the legendary wall?
The legendary, sorry?
Legendary wall.
Well,
Ramacon.
So I used to run an Arcades deck.
Of course you did.
And I had to stop because of all the Donald Trump jokes.
Oh boy.
I feel like this is just like even more so. So I will not personally be playing with this. If people enjoy it, Godspeed.
I'm happy it exists.
Yeah.
I'm happy it exists. And we're not seeing like, oh, there's walls everywhere in Commander now. Mm-hmm. But the fact that it exists for those like 32 players that really just want to put up like 07s and just kick it. I also like the shenanigans part.
Mm-hmm.
That's
you what draws me to it.
Yeah, right. Like it's almost like the plane chase sort of iteration that you can have this loads of fun by changing game states.
Mm.
And I really like that because in plane chase you need time.
Yeah.
For a 4-player game, it adds easily an hour. Easily an hour because game states restart and the shenanigans. But this, it allows you to have you're going to play Narset? Okay. Fine by me. You're going to have to deal with some shenanigans now. And I think something like that can really keep overpowered decks in check, which I think is great conceptually. And also, like, why shouldn't we have a legendary for everything? We should have an legendary archer. We should have a legendary centaur, which we do. Like, those things should all exist.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't think we'd get wall, but here we are, which is good.
Yeah.
I also thought Idol of Oblivion was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think that piece of showing one of the Eldrazi Titans as they envisioned it, underground and hidden, that it references some of the abilities that they would pray to and have it as a religious figure on Zendikar. But at the same time, it still gives you, oh wait, this isn't a human we're referencing. This is an actual Eldrazi. And you can tell because it has the shoulder spikes in it. And there's more storyline on this. Jay and Ellie talked about this quite a bit on Twitter. But it's just simple. It's just a simple way to really give us, if you haven't read the comics, because they had the whole comic thing, with entering the Iboog and all that jazz. If you didn't read the webcomics, if you didn't get the physical version of it, they still want you to be aware of some storyline things in card form. Mm-hmm. You get the Iboog in card, but it doesn't tell you, well, what happened? What went on there? What was down there? What worked?
Right.
And, she added Ghostfire and but just a great concept in there. And, 2-drop, draw card, create a token thing. Like, people are going to play that forever.
Yeah.
Last thing on that, Mass Diminish. I think you like that whimsy.
You tagging me on a whimsy lover?
I think so. Well, look at this card.
Yeah.
Look at this card. And it's Gargamel. It's straight up Smurf Gargamel. Like, he even has the right color blue. It's Gargamel. Don't even hate.
I hadn't noticed that particular part, but now that you've said it, I'm completely sold. I'm completely sold.
You can't not with the blue, with the face, the eyebrows. It's the eyebrows.
Yeah.
Like, I'm right away like, okay, who was in a meeting was like,
yeah.
What if we put Gargamel in a set? And everyone's like, what? Ethan puts it like slips like a post-it note next to the person next to him. He's like, dude, what if Gargamel? And everyone's like, one of all who's Gargamel, and like, okay, I got to slip this to like a Gen Xer or something. I can't send it to the Gen Y kid. But I think that's great. I like these outside influences, and also like the idea of making everything in one line. It's great in Commander. It's whimsical.
It also wouldn't feel out of place on Eldraine now. Like it seems like it could just
not at all like a fairy sort of trick, right? I those sort of polymorphy sort of things are just great to have. Also in Commander, who doesn't want to have that shenanigans?
Yeah.
Someone brings a Tinker out, and you're like, oh, okay, enjoy that 1/1. Get them. Because until your next turn, which takes forever. Okay, standout art. Only got a couple here. But I already mentioned one. I already mentioned Hour of Reckoning. I think that's fantastic. I love that.
Yeah.
Ability to show religious flavor in, because a lot of the times they would really stray away from it. And I think there's been a active effort, Hindu art that's celebrated, that people can see themselves in that. People can see, Christian art in it. I want to see more of that. Like, I want to see some Shinto art. I want to see some differences of Islamic traditions in there. I think that'd be like show a mosque instead of like a traditional church.
Yeah.
Because you get the multicolored windows of a mosque, which stained glass, there's no difference there. But you can make it feel more than just the Library of Alexandria. So great piece there for me. You mentioned a work that I thought was fantastic, and I didn't think it got enough love.
Yeah, and I mean, this card is not just a great work of art, but it's also definitely shenanigan worthy. So we're talking about Aeon Engine. And one of the things I like about this card is just the way it depicts, both technology and magic in the Magic universe in ways we haven't necessarily seen that much of. Like, it's a kind of like bending of universes and a kind of bleeding of colorscapes. It's very kind of transfixing, and you immediately believe that this can do what it says on the text of the card itself.
Yeah. We see some of this in his original Time Twister reference that he made for the Vintage Champs. Right, which great to see. I love the orbs things they're reusing as well, to show this time instead of just always going back to the time walk. In this visual story that he even gets to self-reference, which I think is really cool. And yeah, I just like the color. Just a lot going on that I think he just really painted his face off. I also wanted to have a standout art, talk about Griswold quick. And trolls are hard, man. They're just a difficult thing to paint interesting. And, looking at what Philip did here with the lotus in his hand, with the mushrooms on his arm, with the plants at his hip that, almost covers his nudity, to the creature that's hanging on his shoulder. How does that work? That, like, he picked up a dead thing and put it on him and it's, like, wasting away or something? Just very literal, like, okay, I'm doing this, making a plant, dead creature on me, blah, blah, plant in my hand, here you go, new plant. You're like, huh? I just want to call out, because I think that art is just really well done by Philip. I think the scene looks great, well-painted background to highlight of all the mechanical things as separate, very colorful, celebratory troll that instead of a negativity or a hexproof, you get to see this fun, weird dude. Yeah. This is just great to see it. He wasn't even a marquee legendary, which I think was great. So thought that was great. And that's kind of the set. It was a lot of other great cards in it, no doubt about it. Just wanted to highlight a few.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for us.
Yeah, I want to thank you again, Grouch, for bringing me on, doing a little review. And, maybe we'll do a big round table sometime soon.
That'd be great.